In a world full of stories, some change us forever. They remind us that appearances can be deceiving, and that kindness, in the simplest form, has the power to transform lives. Today, I'm going to tell you a story of an unlikely meeting between two very different people. One is a millionaire living in luxury, while the other is a homeless man living on the streets, forgotten by society. This is a tale of fate, of kindness, and of an unbelievable twist that no one could have seen coming. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the streets of the city. The world seemed to slow down, and yet, inside a tall glass building on the edge of town, things were moving at lightning speed. Meet James, a millionaire businessman who had it all: success, wealth, and power. Yet something felt missing. Despite his fame and fortunes, James had always felt an emptiness in his heart. The world had been kind to him, but the kindness he longed for seemed so far away. One evening, after a long day of meetings and calls, James decided to take a walk. The crisp air of the evening felt like a fresh start, and he hoped it would clear his mind. As he walked, he passed through the familiar streets, but this time something caught his eye. A figure slumped on the cold pavement, wrapped in old tattered clothes. His face was hidden beneath the hood of his coat, and his hands shook slightly. Whether from cold or hunger, James couldn't tell. The man didn't ask for anything, but his presence felt like a silent cry for help. James stopped. He had seen many homeless people over the years, but something about this man was different. There was a sadness in his posture, an exhaustion in the way he sat, like he had given up on life itself. Without thinking, James knelt down beside him. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked softly, though he wasn't sure why he even bothered. He had seen people ignore the homeless for years, as if they weren't even human. But this time, his heart urged him to do something. The man looked up slowly, his face pale and weathered by time. He blinked as though trying to focus, and then gave a weak smile. "I'm fine. Just, a little tired." James could see the dirt and pain on his face. His heart clenched. Without hesitation, he offered the man some money, but the homeless man shook his head. "No, I don't need money." The man's voice was rough, yet it carried a strange sense of humility. James was surprised. Most people, in his experience, would never turn down a chance for help, especially when they had nothing. But this man seemed different. There was something in his eyes, a quiet strength, as if he had endured more than anyone could ever understand. "Then what do you need?" James asked, his voice gentle. The man hesitated for a moment, and then, as if deciding to trust James, he spoke. "A warm meal and maybe a roof over my head for one night." James didn't think twice. He stood up, extending a hand to help the man to his feet. "You're coming with me," he said firmly. James didn't know why, but something about this man called to him. Perhaps it was his vulnerability, or maybe it was the kindness he had in his eyes despite the world around him. Either way, James couldn't just leave him there. They walked together to James's penthouse. It wasn't far, but in the silence of the walk, the homeless man barely spoke. He just followed, his footsteps heavy with exhaustion. Once inside, James offered him a seat, and within minutes, a meal was placed before him. The man looked at the food as if it was a gift from heaven. He didn't eat immediately, but instead just stared at it, almost as though he couldn't believe it was real. "Go ahead," James urged, feeling a strange mix of sympathy and curiosity. "Eat." The man smiled again, his eyes welling up with tears. "Thank you," he whispered. As they ate in silence, James couldn't help but feel a strange pull towards this man. Who was he? What had brought him to this point? And why did it feel as though their paths had crossed for a reason? Finally, after the meal was finished, the man spoke up again. "I guess you're wondering who I am," he said softly. James nodded, not wanting to push, but unable to hide his curiosity. "I'm just someone who's been through a lot," the man continued. "I've seen the worst of life. And at one point, I had everything too, but things change, people change, and sometimes life just isn't what you expect." James furrowed his brow. He didn't know if the man was just talking to pass the time, or if he really meant something more. Before he could ask another question, the man stood up. I should be going, he said, his voice still quiet, but now with a hint of urgency. Wait, no, James protested, standing as well. You can stay here, please. But the man shook his head. You've already done more for me than I could ever ask for. You've given me warmth, food, and kindness. That's more than enough. But there's something I have to do. Something that might change everything. James didn't understand, but he didn't argue. There was something about the man's words that made him feel uneasy. It was as if he knew something James didn't. Just as the man reached the door, he turned around. His eyes locked with James's for a moment. And for the first time, James felt a shiver run down his spine. It was like staring into the depths of a storm. I hope you'll understand one day, the man said cryptically. I hope you'll forgive me. Before James could say anything else, the door closed softly behind him. He stood there, staring at the empty space, wondering what just happened. Days passed, and James tried to shake off the strange encounter. He couldn't stop thinking about the man. Who was he? What did he mean by those final words? James searched the internet, looking for any hint of the man's identity, but found nothing. Then, one evening, as he was scrolling through social media, something caught his eye. A post, a picture of a charity event, a man wearing a suit, surrounded by smiling faces. But it wasn't just anyone in that photo. It was the homeless man! James's heart skipped a beat. The man in the photo was none other than Cristiano Ronaldo, the football legend, the one he had seen on TV countless times, a global icon. But why would he be in such a situation? Why would he pretend to be homeless? The pieces slowly started to fall into place. James felt his hands tremble as he read the article attached to the picture. The story was about a charitable project Ronaldo was working on, helping the homeless, supporting those in need. But there was more to the story. It turned out that Cristiano Ronaldo had been living a double life for years. After a difficult personal loss, he had decided to experience life from the other side, to understand what it was like to live without fame, without fortune. It was part of his mission to raise awareness for the homeless and to show that even the wealthiest and most famous had a responsibility to help others. The realization hit James like a wave. He had helped one of the most famous people in the world, someone who had the power to change lives. And yet, he never even knew it. The man had come to him not for charity, but for understanding, for connection. In the end, James learned that kindness doesn't know fame or fortune. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. What matters is how you treat others, especially those who have nothing to offer in return. He had helped a man not because of his wealth, but because of the simple need for kindness. And in return, he received a lesson that no money could ever buy. As for Cristiano Ronaldo, his mission had succeeded. He had shown the world that there is more to life than what we see on the surface. Sometimes it takes losing everything to realize what truly matters. And sometimes it takes a stranger's kindness to help us find our way back. Thank you for joining me in this touching and mysterious story. If you've ever been moved by an act of kindness, or if you've learned something valuable from an unexpected encounter, share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd like to hear more heartwarming stories, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Until next time, remember, kindness can change the world, and sometimes it's the smallest acts that make the biggest impact.